For the past 2 years, Blossom has been building the most comprehensive database for the psychedelics industry to accelerate the blossoming psychedelics as medicines industry. On Blossom, you'll find data, summarized information on different psychedelic topics, and timely insights. Through gathering, collating, and organizing commercial, regulatory, and scientific information in a custom-made data platform, we make data and timely insights accessible for all who may be interested in this developing sector. One such area that we will particularly focus on is the bedrock, the foundation of psychedelics as medicines, clinical trials. In today's presentation, I will take you on a whirlwind tour through clinical trials with psychedelic compounds. We'll discover the rising number of trials, 305 to be exact, that have been completed or are ongoing, the mental health indicators, such as PTSD, that are being investigated, and we'll discover the most clinically active regions of the world. And most importantly, we will discuss when we can expect psychedelics as medicines. We will go on a journey from the first clinical trials in the 21st century to when we can expect which psychedelics to be approved. During our research, 2 things stood out: that we are just at the beginning, that there's still a lot of work to be done, and 2, that the work is accelerating, that there's an upward trend. Well, let's get to it. This is a snapshot of clinical trials, and I'll give a brief introduction for those who aren't too familiar or need a quick refresher. Clinical trials, they want to generate data on dosage, safety, and efficacy. Phase 1 trials are usually done with healthy participants to find the right or upper limit of the dosage that is safe. Phase 2 trials investigate how well the treatments work in patient populations, and Phase 3 often compares the new treatment to the standard course, and all while confirming effective dosing and effectiveness. An example of a Phase 2 trial is the Awaken MDMA for Alcoholism trial, or alcohol use disorder. And an example of a Phase 3 trial is the MAPS MDMA trial. A lot of times these phases are broken into 2 subsections, but for brevity we'll stick to the phases for this talk. Finally, Phase 4 trials monitor this long-term response to the medication after launch. And as you can see, nearly all of the studies of this type are being done, at least at this time, with ketamine. If this graph makes anything clear, let it be this: we are still at the very beginning. We're just at second base. Most of the data that you will see today has been sourced from clinicaltrials.gov, but we've also added a lot of different sources next to that, and they will all be available on our website. Our team has heavily edited the data for relevancy and have sourced trials that were also not immediately reported on clinical trials. Psychedelics are being developed for a wide range of health indicators, from depression to cluster headaches. We are the furthest along with depression, here indicated as MDD, or major depressive disorder. And we could say there's the subcategories of treatment-resistant depression, bipolar depression, and also suicidal ideation, which unfortunately also goes hand in hand some of the times. Then we can also see that PTSD, of course, what MAPS is focusing on, is being investigated, and also a lot of studies, or a high number of studies, on alcohol use disorder and anxiety. So when has research started on each of these health indicators? The chart here displays all the studies that have been done in patient populations. So this sometimes excludes, or often excludes, the Phase 1 studies. Although this slide may not say much immediately, we can clearly see the upward trend in a number of studies. And also can see that, for instance, for bipolar and suicidal ideation, the research has only started relatively recently. And as we saw in the data, it's also been done exclusively, almost exclusively, with ketamine. So where are the trials happening? Well, here, America is still first. It is the most active when it comes to running clinical trials, with Switzerland, with of course the Liechti lab, coming in second place. The UK takes the 4th spot after Canada, and it's been recently ramping up the number of trials in the country. What might be surprising is the number of trials in China, where ketamine has been researched for quite a while. China has also conducted one study with psilocybin for the use of migraines, or to combat migraines. Not only are most of the studies in Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and I guess mostly democratic countries, also called weird countries or weird populations, the patient populations are currently not that diverse. One 2018 review found that 82% of patients are white and only 2% are of Asian origin. A startling discovery, given that this is where 60% of the world lives. Other ethnic groups are similarly underrepresented. Studies on dosing, efficacy, genetics, and differing attitudes towards mental health services should be aimed at a more diverse and representative group for society to be better able to generalize the results of the current body of research. So, what does it take to bring a psychedelic to market? Here I present two different timelines. One for MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for PTSD from MAPS, and another of esketamine for depression, and it is specifically treatment-resistant depression by Johnson & Johnson. As you see, there was a very short development cycle for esketamine from Johnson & Johnson. And the cost for this is way lower than the average of 5.8 billion that they have spent on developing new medicines. And it's also probably way below the 800 million that's now being estimated how much it will cost to bring a drug to market. We do also know that MAPS, although the longer timeline, is following a far leaner approach, with their total cost to develop MDMA for PTSD being probably under 100 million. And this is also money that last year they've been able to completely raise. Although the expected approval date has been creeped upwards over the years, 2023 at this time looks like a very reasonable estimate. So bringing a psychedelic to market, or bringing a medicine to market in general, how would that look and what are our chances? So the data here is based on research by BioQS Advisors and Informa UK that they conducted this year. And they looked what would it take to bring a novel compound as a medicine to market. And the chances there are below 10%. But repurposing a drug for a new health indicator faces somewhat better odds and has about a 25% chance of getting approved. Will this be different for psychedelics? Possibly. For many, we know the safety profile from earlier research, and a lot of evidence is pointing towards effectiveness. But enthusiasm and personal transformation stories may not always translate to success in phase 3 trials. We should applaud the companies that are taking a risk in developing existing and novel psychedelic compounds as medicines, but still understand that they are indeed taking a risk. So let's take a look who are currently putting their money on the line. Press releases may have led you to believe that hundreds of trials are on the way. It sure so did for me and our team before we dove into the data. At this time, the biggest sponsors of research are Compass, MindMed, of course Johnson & Johnson, Atai, and its various subsidiaries. Somewhat surprising is the number of trials already sponsored by governments. This is mostly done by the Veterans Affairs Services in America. Projecting the current numbers into the future, we can expect the number of trials to continue to rise quickly. Not only should many companies actually execute on their plans to run trials, we can also expect more studies to be sponsored by governments. Not only in the US, but for instance also the German government, which is sponsoring the Mind Foundation's psilocybin trial. There are currently tens of companies pursuing trials, of which the most certain are listed on the slide here. And as you can see in the bottom right, there are many more companies that have planned trials or at least have indicated that they would want to run trials. The trials here are sorted either by the start date or probable start date. if the trial isn't already ongoing at this time. And as previously mentioned, much research is picking up in the UK, with Beckley, Awaken, and Small Pharma being just 3 of the companies running trials there. And even a company last week indicated that they would host more and more trials for the UK. So we can expect them to maybe even take the third spot in the future. It is tough to make predictions, especially about the future. That is what famous baseball playing philosopher Yogi Berra has said, and to which I wholeheartedly agree. The information on the slide is our best, probably optimistic estimate for when the different psychedelics or their second generation equivalents could be approved for medical use. This is based on the current drugs that are under development, such as MDMA for PTSD, and drugs that are now just going into clinical trials. For many compounds and health indicators, there's good anecdotal evidence, and we expect more than 25%, mentioned previously, to successfully pass through the trials. If all of these drugs for all of these indicators will make it through, we can know right now, but many are sure working towards this goal. One final note that should be made here is the off-label use of psychedelics. It's something that we see with the use of ketamine, and that we can surely expect with other psychedelics once they are approved for one indicator. So even before some of these specific combinations will make it through clinical trials, we can expect some of them to already be out there helping people. As you have seen today, we're still at the beginning, but at the beginning of a huge change, one that will continue to grow and blossom at an ever-increasing rate. In the third version of the Psychedelics as Medicine report, we will dive deeper into this dataset and all the data you've seen previously. Speaking of the Psychedelics as Medicines report, Blossom and Psych will be releasing the third version of the report at the start of September. It will cover all aspects of this blossoming industry, from clinical trials to patents, and from LSD to salvia. There are still a few spaces available for sponsorship, and you can reach out to our lovely Victoria to claim a spot in the most read report on the psychedelic industry. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you a great rest of the conference.